queens and heroes acting out there on the silver screen. Come grab a seat, the popcorn is on me.
Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, hanging out with Thomas Manning, as pretty much always, unless he decides to sleep in. And we're happy to welcome one of the newest members of the North Carolina Film Critics Association, Jacob Throneberry. So good to see you. And I got to tell you, the first time that I ever saw your name, I misread it, and I kept having these flashbacks to the Wild Thornberries, and I loved that series, man. I loved that series, and I'm sure you've probably gotten that a few times, but welcome. We're glad to have you, man.
Yeah, no, I've gotten that my whole life, which doesn't bother me. It's a great show, great movie, so I have no issue with that. But yeah, it's made me very memorable to people because
That's right.
I will meet somebody once. And they'll say, "Oh, is your name, the Thornberries?" And I'll say, "No, it's Thornberry, but it is what it is." And then the next time they meet me, they remember me because of that. So yeah, I guess it's helped in some way. but yeah, I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad you asked me to come on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, and we're going to have this as kind of a meet and greet show to get to know who you are and your love of film. But there are a lot of folks out there that are wanting to know about this Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So we thought we'd break you in right off the bat, and we'd talk about this film, a decade almost in the making to get to this point at Volume 3. And Thomas and I have had some dialogue about it, and we're happy to have you in to talk about your thoughts on this film. It's characters that we met on screen, like I said, almost 10 years ago, and we've seen them in various incarnations and standalone films, through the Avengers films, and even a holiday special. And, we've all become familiar with them if you're familiar with the MCU. So dive in and give me some of your thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and Thomas and I'll chime in as well.
Yeah, so I think, as me, a huge MCU fan, I definitely feel what everybody else is feeling that over the past couple movies, ever since Endgame, it's kind of been here or there. There have been films that, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, that have been solely to further the story and felt episodic, and there have been films, like Black Panther and like Spider-Man No Way Home that have felt like true standalone movies, and I do think that Guardians is one of those. I think that there's no mention of the multiverse. There's no mention of even the Avengers or anything spread out above that. It's all self-contained in its own story. And I really think that this is one of the few times that Marvel has ever stepped back completely and let James Gunn do what he wants to do, which, because this is the last time he's going to be doing one of these, and this is the last time a lot of these characters are going to be here. It makes a lot of sense, but because of that, I felt like this movie felt like the most James Gunn movie that a movie can be. It felt like it had all of his little idiosyncrasies that he loves putting in his movies. The humor was there, but then it got darker than most MCU movies got. Not even just in the script, in the filmmaking, and in the directing. Certain scenes had me truly clasping the armrest, because I was like, this is not what you usually see from an MCU movie. And so between all of that, between Rocket Raccoon's origin story, which might be one of the most hard to watch origin stories from any film character ever, and between that and the true culmination and finality of the Guardians as we know it, I truly loved it. I thought it was I didn't think it was a perfect movie. I definitely thought that there were some issues here and there, but I thought it was I thought it was the best that James Gunn could have done in the confines that he was set in.
Thomas, go ahead and chime in.
Yeah, and you mentioned how dark it gets in some aspects, and a lot of that is, on the shoulders of the high evolutionary, the villain in this film. And a comparison I made when I was talking to somebody else, one of my friends who hasn't seen the movie yet but was asking how it was, and I mentioned going back to the first Toy Story movie, the character of Sid, who did all these just horrifying experiments on these toys, and of course in a Pixar movie it's going to be dialed back a little bit, but even that, as a child, that scarred me in a sense, and in this it's that times 10, because we had the High Evolutionary doing all these experiments on animals, and of course they're not real animals, they're CGI creations, but we've grown so emotionally connected to these characters that seeing them go through these just traumatic events is, for us, the audience, almost like a secondhand trauma as well. So, so I think definitely not for the younger audiences. I think you could get away with taking your kids to some MCU movies for sure, but this one I wouldn't say anybody younger than, 11, 12 years old, they would probably walk away from this with definitely some heavy scarring. So.
Well, I blame your parents, Thomas, for taking you to see Toy Story 3 and not preparing you or Toy Story with Sid. I blame your parents for that. Give me the numbers. I'll text them, talk to them, and maybe we can set up some times for you to have some really good dialogue with somebody that might be able to help you through this trauma. But yeah, you nailed it, Thomas, that seeing these creatures, you did feel emotionally connected. And Jacob, you mentioned that too. There was really heart in this, and you cared about these characters. You cared about Rocket. You knew that Rocket was kind of tortured, and you knew something was going on with him throughout these films. You just never really knew exactly why, unless, of course, you know the canon that was placed in the comics and the source material. But the way it was presented, my eyeballs were sweating a few times. I got to tell you, I could really feel it. The religious symbolism throughout this film too. You had elements of Moses. You had elements of Noah that were showing up in this, and just the brokenness of these characters. Every character was broken in some way, whether it was physically, emotionally, or mentally, and yet we kind of discover that everybody's got purpose, even in that brokenness. That imperfection is what makes us perfectly compatible with the world around us if we choose to do it together, and that's something that really spoke to me, and I really loved that about this film.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think going through with what the film is doing and how they're protecting the family, because I think that's one thing for me that really stood out. The Guardians have always been, I get that Fantastic Four is Marvel's first family, but the Guardians are the MCU's first family. They are the group of ragtag people that came together, and that's what the Guardians movies have always been, is a found family story. And I really love that was highlighted the most in this movie, whether it be Nebula telling Gamora that they're trying to save Rocket because he's family, or you see Quill doing what he does and going to extreme lengths because he says that's his best friend, that's his brother, that's his family. And I think that a lot of that was truly highlighted in how much they cared for one another. And going back to Rocket's, very traumatic story, I think there's a lot of the times that something like that could be classified as, manipulative and trying to make it as traumatic as possible for the sake of making the audience sad. But I really feel like with this movie and with how Rocket's storyline has been over the past 2 movies, 4 outings, whatever he's had, it really does feel earned, because he's always been the one person who has been quiet about his past, who hasn't shared what his past has been, who has always had this underlying angst about him. And I mean, if what happened to him happened to me, I'd probably be the same way. I truly I understand what it is, and you kind of finally understand what he's going through. And there's a line in this movie that happens, towards the third act, that really flips all of the Guardians movies and outings almost on their head and makes you rethink how you've been looking at every outing so far. We always look at it as, you know, Star-Lord is the main character, Star-Lord is the leader. But when they say that line, and I'm not going to say it now, you really start to think about who have these stories been about. And it makes me want to go back and watch The Guardians and see how Gunn has been putting all of these small things in here that really tells that story that he's trying to get across in Guardians Volume 3. And I think that it really, really works in that aspect.
Yeah, a beautiful film to me. Everything from a technical aspect really clicked. The sound design and mixing, the cinematography, the editing, all those things really, really worked for me. Thomas, I know that there was one thing that did not work for you as a whole relating to sound.
Yeah, definitely. As far as the needle drops are concerned, I didn't think everything hit quite as seamlessly as it did in the first two films. I think you go back to the opening of the first film with Come and Get Your Love, that kind of set the pace for the needle drops throughout the entire runtime, and I thought everything in that just melded together so beautifully. And I think the second film built on that even further, from Mr. Blue Sky to Fleetwood Mac's The Chain to Father and Son, Cat Stevens there at the finale. And in this film, I really like the way it opens with the Radiohead song, the acoustic, with the camera slowly gliding through the opening credits.
Bradley Cooper singing
again. Exactly. Oh, I didn't even put that together. You're exactly right. I love that. But then in the middle act, I thought some of the needle drops felt like, okay, we got to put these in because it's kind of a jukebox musical. Mm-hmm. But then we get to the third act and everything starts falling into place more. And when we get to the Beastie Boys' No Sleep Till Brooklyn, I think it's almost like a perfect metaphor for that kind of imbalance in the middle part of the film. There was something of an imbalance in the needle drops because there was an imbalance in the characters. But then they all come together and they're all working together, and the music is just blending beautifully with the action and the filmmaking. And so as soon as you hear that needle drop with the Beastie Boys, just hold on, because you're in for a treat for the next 5 minutes after that, and really for the rest of the film.
Yeah, beautiful story to me, a beautiful film, and I just came out going, wow, this is just, it's beauty, and it's a wonderful closure for me. It was a wonderful way of learning this origin story, as traumatic as it was. I'm glad we got to see it within this package, and I think that worked so well. Final comment I'm going to make is that I will revisit this film several times while it's in theaters. I did see it in IMAX, and the sound was unbelievable, as well as the picture. And I think I'm going to be checking this out in 4DX as well, just because I want to know what the raccoon smells like. So that's the reason I'm going to do that. Jacob, any final comments before we give our rating?
Yeah, I guess final comments before. I have to highlight the CGI, because I think that's been a big issue with Marvel projects over the past couple times. And I thought that the CGI in this was actually... You can tell that they have taken the brunt force of all of the kind of storm that came with them from She-Hulk and all of that. And now you see them starting to spread their projects out, and I really think it shows, especially in this one. Because I thought that the CGI, the character designs, all of the animals, like you said, of course they didn't look uber realistic, but they still looked better than a lot of what has been happening. So yeah, that's just probably the last thing I wanted to highlight was very, very good CGI work, I think.
All right, Thomas, final thoughts before we dive in. And Jacob, just so you can start thinking about it, when we give our grades, they're based on a report card, so it's like an A to F,
that's
or A,
exactly
A plus to an F.
So perfect.
All right, cool.
Yep.
All right, Thomas, final thoughts.
Just the storytelling language that James Gunn has developed with these characters over the past 9 years, and with the third film of the trilogy, there's almost been a bridge that's been built between the audience and the characters, and he kind of meets us right perfectly in the middle in this film. And so yeah, I just absolutely loved it, and so hats off to James Gunn.
All right, Thomas, what's your rating for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
And my rating is a solid A for Guardians Volume 3.
All right, Jacob, how about you?
My rating is also an A, and I think DC fans should be very excited for what they've got coming.
Right there with you, a solid A across the board. A for me as well for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 right here on Meet Me at the Movies. We are joined by Thomas Manning and Jacob Throneberry. And Jacob, where can people find you if they want to find your work online anywhere? Go ahead and let them know that right off, and then we'll come back after the break and talk more about how you got into this love of film.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at tberry57 and on Letterboxd at tberry57. And if you want to find my written review of Guardians, where I kind of rambled for a very long time, you can find that at In Session Film. It was posted this morning.
Awesome. We're going to take a quick intermission right here on Meet Me at the Movies. We appreciate everybody spending time with us, whether you're doing that on C19 TV or through WGWG. Appreciate you so much. Hang around. We've got a lot more. We're going to learn more about Jacob and his love of cinema right after this quick break.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
For many kids, just showing up to school is a challenge. Staying through graduation is even harder. So at communities and schools, we do just what our name says. Our staff brings a community of resources to meet each student's needs right in their school, doing whatever it takes to keep kids focused, so they see what we see, a bright future. Join in at communitiesinschools.org.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hi, and welcome back into Meet Me in the Movies. I am Thomas Manning, joined as always by Noel Manning, and we have special guest Jacob Throneberry here to join us. And I've known Jacob on Twitter for a few years, but I've never actually really carried on a conversation with him. So I think this is the first time we've actually met each other on Zoom. And so really great to have you here, Jacob. And you and I come somewhat from the same generation. I think you're a couple years older than me, but we're both kind of a bit of on the younger side of the film critics game here. So I just want to have you share a little bit about your background as a movie lover and as a cinephile, and what point in your life did this love for movies kick in, and how did that kind of shape the path for where you are today, sitting on the show with us on Meet Me in the Movies?
Yeah, from a really young age, I'd always loved storytelling, and I'd always loved movies in a different way than what my friends would appreciate. My first movie I ever remember going to was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I think at that point I was maybe 4, but I vividly remember being in the theater and seeing what was on screen, and through that I just, it was always something that I loved, but never something that I truly embraced. And then my freshman year of college, I moved away in 2015, and I moved away from home, and I was having a hard time making friends and meeting people. And at that point, I turned to movies, and I really started watching more. I would watch 1 or 2 a day. I had a whole list, and I was intaking some of the most profound and intricate cinema that I had ever seen in my entire life. And I'd really, really started falling in love with it. And and wanting to talk about it more. And from then, that's when I got into the actual entertainment side of things, and that's when I got into the writing side of things, and that has just branched off to, me getting my minor in film studies, and now me going off to get my master's in film studies, and trying to continue that line because of what I gained over the past couple of years. But yeah, it really was something that just kind of, I guess, out of loneliness, I could say, I really just was able to almost escape and use it as escapism and find my own path through watching movies and through putting myself in the lives of these characters.
There's a comfort in being able to do that, and you find yourself developing friendships and relationships with these characters within these storylines. We talked about that before the break, is how we all have come to know and love and appreciate the Guardians. And as you've been diving in deeper to films, as you talked about during college, you've had a chance to reflect a little bit, and we did give you some talking points so you could have some time to think about this. But if you were going to name some films, maybe 3 films that define you, and not 3 favorite films, but 3 films that you could say, okay, this speaks to who I am, who I want to be, or what I think of myself. Throw out a few of those films and maybe why.
The first one I'm going to say is actually my favorite movie of all time, and that is Bo Burnham's 8th Grade. I grew up, I was in middle school when Bo Burnham's first started getting popular. I remember being one of the first couple thousand people who subscribed to him on YouTube. One of my friends in middle school showed me him, and there were just a lot of times where in middle school that I would feel, alone and feel, how middle schoolers feel, and I'll be able to go back to that. And so for him to make a movie about 8th grade, about one of the most awkward, weird points of your life, and to do so in a way that highlights unknown anxiety and that kind of pushback with your parents and the pushback with yourself, and really find the beauty in self-discovery at that age, was really, really special to me. And then another movie that almost feels like a spiritual sequel, in my opinion, to 8th Grade is Cha-Cha Real Smooth. They came out last year. And with Cha-Cha Real Smooth, it kind of hit me at a point that was almost perfectly lined up with the movie. I was post-college. I had a job I hated. I had a life that I was, wanting to do all of these other things, and I just didn't know how to do them. So I was always chasing, to find that kind of solidarity in life. And once I stepped back and let it come to me, that's when I was really able to start going forward. And then my last one, is the one I struggled with probably the most, but it is one that has always been my favorite. Ever since I was younger, I went and visited the place it was filmed, and went and visited the house that they were standing outside of for the most of it. But it's The Truman Show. I think Jim Carrey, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest actors who's ever lived. I have a giant poster. My parents got me a poster of it from, it's a theatrical poster from the release, and it's framed up on my wall. I love taking, in my opinion, I think comedic actors are probably some of the best actors ever. They know how to dig into their own pain and into their own hurt, and they know that they want to make people laugh because they don't want to make people feel how they do. And I think Jim Carrey in that movie is unknowing. He's in this new world. He's in this new place that is so foreign to him. And he feels safe, and he feels like he knows everything, but he truly never does. And I think that ending of, deciding, I could stay in a place that feels safe to me and just live my life, or I could go off into the unknown, into an entire new world that I've never even thought about, is, to me, it's the best ending in my opinion, of all time. It's that decision he makes to kind of go off into the dark, that the unknowing, that is so beautiful to me. But I'd probably say that those are the three that really try to define me, and probably three of my favorites of all time.
Wow, beautiful choices, beautiful films, and the variety of those I love as well. We've really got just a couple minutes, but no, Thomas, I want to get you to dive in and ask one more question, and Jacob, we'll bring you back because we've got a lot of other questions to ask you. So we're going to try to get you back once a month to talk movies. But Thomas, go ahead and dive in with a final question.
All right, so is there one particular film or filmmaker that you can look to their work anytime that you might be going through something, going through a difficult time, or going through adversity, that that you can turn to that movie or that director, and they'll always lift your spirits and give you a brighter perspective on things?
The one filmmaker, it's a group of filmmakers that I have to highlight with this, would be Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and I'm going to broaden that out. Not just Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the movies that they've directed, but the movies that they've written and produced. Everything that they've touched, to me, has been gold, whether it be 21 and 22 Jump Street, some of the best comedies of the past 30 years. The Lego Movie, a genuine masterpiece, and I think one of the most surprising and shocking films that has come out in quite some time. And the reason for me where I think Mario failed, because the Lego Movie didn't. Or you've got Into the Spider-Verse, one of my favorite movies of all time. And then you've got The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and all of these that feel comforting in different sorts of ways. Lego Movie is someone who feels normal, that wants to be extraordinary. Same with Into the Spider-Verse. Mitchell's vs. the Machines, you've got someone who is almost like at war with their parents and trying to learn how to love each other. And I just think everything that they've done has been absolutely gold, and has been, in my opinion, some of the best things that cinema has ever created.
Awesome. Well, Jacob Throneberry, thank you so much for spending time with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies. And we're really looking forward to having you back to talk more about your love of film, and to review more films as well. Thomas, thank you as well, man. And I'm going to wrap things with a movie quote of the week, as I always try to do. This comes from a gift from my favorite daughter. It's the Cult movie quote book, and that is my favorite daughter, Catherine, who gave this to me. And this particular quote sounds like it could be one that was from Guardians of the Galaxy, but it actually came from Repo Man from 1984. It happens sometimes. People just explode. Natural causes. So there is the movie quote of the week, and thanks to Repo Man and to Catherine for getting me this book that just never fails to provide love and content for this show. Jacob, once again, where can people find you on social?
At tbear57 on Twitter, and then you can find everything from there.
Awesome. Well, until next time, for Meet Me in the Movies, really do appreciate you spending time with us, Jacob. And Thomas, as always, thanks for your insight as well. And you can email us, info@c19.tv, and you can also catch this on the radio, WGWG, or on TV, C19 TV. Until next time, for Meet Me at the Movies, and for the cast and crew here, that's a wrap.
We'll gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.